If you're a health of a life coach who feels that your coaching business is all over the place and you're never sure what you should be working on any particular day or week, then today's episode of the Wholehearted Business Show is going to help you create some structure in your coaching business so that you feel so much more organised. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're going to help you create some structure in your coaching business if you feel like you are missing that right now. Now, having some structure is really helpful for you to move your business forward, for you to feel organised, for you to ultimately actually get the results that you want, whether that's a bit more income, more clients, better kind of sense of freedom in your business, because without that structure, everything can just feel all over the place. First of all, if any of this topic really resonates for you, I'd love for you to check out my new free checklist. It's for each week of your coaching business, so you know what you need to be working on. This is just a suggested list, but it's great if you get stuck and feel overwhelmed, not sure what it is that you should actually be doing in your coaching business. The link is in the description. Go and check it out now. So what are we talking about when we talk about needing more structure in our coaching business? When we don't have structure, it can feel like everything's just a bit all over the place. It can feel really disorganised. You might feel quite overwhelmed a lot of the time. You might be sitting down to work on your coaching business and aren't really sure what it is that you should be doing. And I kind of think of this kind of creating the structure around your coaching business as a bit like the masculine and feminine energetics of your coaching business. So to enable us to have a bit of that intuitive flow in our businesses, we need some of the masculine structure to contain that, or else that kind of energy just doesn't have anywhere to go. We kind of try and put it somewhere and it just kind of spills out everywhere and makes a mess. So having some masculine structure in place is really going to help us contain that energy and allow us to show up with a little bit more flow, which funny enough is my word of the year. My word of 2026 is flow. So this is definitely high on my agenda right now. I will say before we get into this, I do tend to lean a bit more towards the masculine organised type in my coaching business. And I really invite you to think a bit about where you naturally kind of lean. Now, obviously, this show is for, and a lot of my clients also are, highly sensitive, heart-centered, neurodiverse, that group of wonderful people. And sometimes we can really struggle with this. Either we get almost like too structured, which is where I tend to lean to, because for me, having lots of structure is a control tactic. And for me, trying to overplan and overstructure is a way for me to try and control outcomes and minimize risk and all of that kind of juicy stuff, shall we say. But for other people, you might struggle a bit more with not having enough structure and feeling like everything is just all over the place. And I think people kind of fall on different ends of the scale or in between, and it's okay wherever you are. I think part of it is recognizing if you have a tendency to lean one way or the other. And I can bring in lots of different angles into this conversation, whether you are neurodivergent and how that presents for you and what that typically looks like for you. You can get into human design if you are into that stuff, and look at your human design and see how that shows up for you and what you might need from that point of view. You can look at, there's a fantastic book called The Four Tendencies, and I think it's Gretchen Rubin, and there's a quiz that you can do. I will put a link in the description. And a lot of her work was around helping people form habits. And in part, it's really, this can be a helpful reframe. Building your coaching business is a habit. Like going to the gym is a habit. Eating healthily is a habit. Building your coaching business, it is a habit. So looking at the four tendencies can be really helpful. Like, for example, if you come out as being a rebel and you try and put frameworks in place to support yourself in your coaching business, you might rebel against them. So it can be really useful. Any knowledge that you have about yourself and how you tend to work. And I mean, the way that I like to think of it for me is I know that I have like what I call my default setting. So in lots of different areas of life, I've started to recognise, oh, that's my default setting, and I will default to this behaviour. I will default to taking these actions or inaction. I will default to this if I don't consciously, intentionally address that or acknowledge it or work on it, or however you want to say it. So recognising what your default setting is really helpful. Again, I've spoken about this around energetics work as well, because I think we all energetically do this too. So it can be really, really useful to think about in the discussion around creating more structure, or a structure that is going to better support you is another way to look at it too. And again, what is a supportive structure for one person might feel like a really restrictive structure for another. So this is a massive invitation to really check in with yourself about what it is that you need in order to thrive and get things done in your coaching business. Because when we're talking about structure, I think what often we are talking about in a very practical sense is the routines, the tasks, the actions, the when the actions are going to happen, the knowing what the actions are. It's like that's your structure. And we do want to have something in place that is going to help us, because again, like I said, without that structure in place, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed, for things not to add up, like actions don't happen in the order that they need to happen in to get a specific result. That can be one of the outcomes of that. The outcomes that you get can feel really unpredictable. Like it's all of that kind of not great feeling stuff that can happen when we don't have any structure at all. But the degree to what we need structure for is going to differ between each individual. And again, you might want to think about all these different things that I've just mentioned and how they show up for you as you think about what kind of structure you're going to need. Another angle of this to remember as well is that depending on your stage of life or what it is that you've got going on right now in your life, your need for structure will change as well. So if you are a new mum, it might be that you need like less structure, or the structure might need to be on a very specific time. But it's going to change depending on what you've got going on. Like if you have literally no kind of commitments or no caring responsibilities, you might actually need quite a lot of structure, because otherwise it might just feel like there's no boundaries or restraints on your time. So that's another way to think about it as well. What have you actually got going on in your life, and what does that mean that you need your structure for? So we've just spoken a little bit about what a structure is, how it's going to be different for everybody, the way in which it might show up. And I wanted to talk a little bit before we dive into like some steps for kind of creating that structure intentionally in your coaching business, what that structure looks like for me and mine. So the way that I think about my business is I kind of almost liken it to a garden. And I'll often also use language like a system or an engine, because it's that kind of doing of something. But I like the idea of thinking of it as a garden, because we are wanting to grow something, we're wanting to produce something. If we think about the flowers, the vegetables, the fruits, that might be the income, the clients, the impact that we're going to have on the world. And we need to know what to plant and when, what to harvest and when. We need to know what needs to be maintained and looked after. We need to know when to weed things out, like all of that kind of stuff. So I think when you recognize that you need something in place that does that, like whatever you call it, if you want to call it like an ecosystem, a garden, an engine, a structure, however you best relate to that, then that is really helpful for creating this structure, because the structure is going to come out of that. So we want to get clear on what that looks like. Now, just to say, I totally teach this in Wholehearted Business. Wholehearted Business is really about helping you create that kind of business engine, that business garden initially. And then my one-to-one work is really helping you kind of scale that to a bigger level. You want to widen your garden, to make your garden bigger and prettier and all that kind of stuff. But Wholehearted Business is really about kind of like getting your garden put together and built and getting your sections laid out and planned out and starting to plant your seeds and all that stuff. So we want to get your garden in place. And for me, what that looks like is I know what I need to do in order to be visible. So I've got the stuff that happens for people to find me. I've got the stuff that happens for people to want to buy from me. I've got the stuff that happens for me to deliver on my business. So in Wholehearted Business, I do break it down into 6 key kind of areas to build that garden initially. But for me, now that I've kind of built that garden out for myself, it's really about the people finding me bit, the sales bit, and the delivery bit are the 3 key things that I tend to think about. So obviously I am a big planner, as I said at the start. I do kind of lean very planny, if you like. And so I do plan quite a lot, although I have to say I used to have over planning tendencies, and they have really reduced over the last few years. Again, I think in line with a lot of the energetic work that I've done recently. So I don't over plan so much now, but I have my annual plan. I share the whole process here on the show to create an annual plan. I'll link to that video again. So I have an annual plan, and I kind of set out like, this is where I'm going. This is the direction that I'm going. These are the things that I want my garden to produce this year, if you like, and set that out. And then I break that down into key projects, when those key projects need to happen, but also I know what my ongoing tasks are. So this has always been a really helpful thing for me, is to know what my ticking over tasks are. I call these ticking over, but these are like literally, these are the things that need to happen for my business to stay alive. And if you imagine with a garden, this is like, you're going to need to water it and you're going to need to feed your plants. Like, this is like the basic stuff. So I know what my ticking over tasks are. And again, we talk about this in the free checklist, so do go and check that out. I know what those absolute essential ticking over tasks are for me and my business at the level that it's at. And then I also have the things that are more kind of projecty based, which are basically, they have a start and an end. So the Wholehearted Business Show is an ongoing task. I do this week in and week out. Setting up the Wholehearted Business Show initially was a project because it had a start and an end. So thinking about things in terms like that can be really helpful. And then once I've got an annual plan, I pull out of that annual plan is my mini seasons. So again, another thing that I'll link to, I know there's going to be lots of links in this episode, but I talked about creating mini seasons and using mini seasons as a way of planning for my business. So this is it's a very specific thing that I do, and I've connected it to the pagan wheel of the year. And again, this is one of the ways where I try and take like quite a masculine planning-y thing and make it a little bit more kind of feminine and energetic. And I connect those mini seasons with the points of the wheel of the year. So what you tend to get is you get like, I think it's 8 chunks of 8 weeks, roughly, very, very roughly. But really what it looks like for me in reality is that it's the term times of my children's school. So here in the UK, we have usually about 6 to 8 weeks of time, and then we have either a 2-week break or a 1-week break, or in the summer we have a 6-week break. And my time is planned around that because my kids, like my entire life is mapped out around the kids and what is going on for the kids and being around for the kids. So that works well for me, but I do kind of connect it back to the wheel of the year because it very loosely maps onto those. So each season I have an idea about like, this is what I want to work on, and I'm pulling that from my annual plan. And then I take that each week, I look back at that mini season plan and be like, right, these are the things that need to be progressed. But each week I also have my ticking over tasks, yeah? So each week I already know, before I even sit down to look at what I'm going to do, it's like, I know that this week I need to create and edit a show. That's always one of the things that I need to do. I always know that I need to check in with my clients. I always know that I need to write to my email list. I always know that I need to do like a financial check and check my cash flow. So I always know that there's certain things that I need to do. And that is the structure of my business. That is the thing that is driving it forward all the time, is having that in place and knowing that beneath it all is this kind of like, the garden is growing and these are the tasks that I'm doing to maintain the garden and to help it grow. So there we go. That's a bit about what that structure looks like for me. And the structure is actually in the planning element of it, so that I kind of am doing that task of being able to take those items down and actually sit down and look at that. So once a week, usually on a Sunday afternoon, usually Sunday afternoons are the afternoons where I'm doing the laundry, doing some cleaning, the kids are kind of just chilling. That's when I'll sit down and do my plan for the week, and that's when I take things out of that list. But ultimately, a lot of it's repeatable. And again, it's repeatable because I've built that garden, I've grown that garden to a certain level where the tasks that I'm doing are about maintenance of that, and then the projecty based things that are about taking the garden to another level, if you like. So we're going to give you 4 steps now to help you think about creating a structure for yourself. The first step is to get really clear about what a structure needs to look like for you and what your, if you like, default setting is. And I think it's so useful to consider what that looks like. Again, you might want to experiment with this, but getting really clear on like, actually, if I have too much structure, like if there's too much like, I must do this on this day. And again, what I mean by too much structure might be Mondays are absolutely for these tasks, Tuesdays are for these tasks, Wednesdays are for these tasks. Like that would be too much structure for me. Like I don't have like, well, Mondays are always marketing and Tuesdays are always clients and Wednesdays are always this. I do have like client only days, like client meeting days, but that would be too much structure. So just to give an example of like too much versus not enough, but I do know what I need to do that week and I can shuffle things around. And I do have like a loose typical things I do on typical days, but it is quite loose. So again, decide what that needs to look like for you. The second step is to get support from somewhere. Now, if you are literally looking at your business thinking, I have got no fucking clue what I'm meant to be working on at all, then this is a really good indicator that you're probably going to benefit from some kind of support. So whatever that looks like, that can look like working with me one-to-one. So do check out my one-to-one coaching packages options. That will obviously help you. And we would set up this together. Wholehearted Business, which is opening in March. Again, what we do in Wholehearted Business is we build the garden. We're going to talk about that in a second, about getting the garden planned out and all that kind of stuff. It can be checking out my free annual plan, the annual planning workshop that I did for 2026. Go and check that out because that's an initial step in terms of getting that plan put together. But getting some kind of support is really helpful if you literally have no idea what you should be doing. If you feel that you do and you want to crack on, then that's amazing. Absolutely go for that. But if you do need support, now is a really, really good time to get it, because setting up this structure in a way that's going to work for you, like this is the container for your coaching business to move forward. So it is quite important. So it can be a really, really good time to get that support. And then the third step is to grow that garden, basically. So one of the reasons that my business ticks over so well, mainly focusing on those ticking over tasks, is because I've done the work to kind of get the garden going. So this is exactly what we do in Wholehearted Business, but it's about if you don't have, for example, an email list set up, if you don't have a way of you showing up in the world where people can find you, some kind of visibility, some kind of marketing, if you don't have, like, your offers are not structured well, if you don't have like all these things set out and kind of built up and created, then it's going to be difficult. So you need to have a plan for creating that stuff, and that's going to give you the structure, not just now in terms of what you need to work on, because you know that you're kind of growing this garden. Like if you sat down, you were like, right, looking at the garden and you were thinking, right, okay, I want the garden to have some beautiful peonies over here, some hydrangeas over here, I want a vegetable garden there, and I want that. And again, you might look at your coaching business and think, I want this much income, I'd love to work with these many clients, and I really want to change the way that women feel about themselves, like in terms of an impact, yeah? And you're looking at your garden again and you're thinking, right, I want to do this. And then you go off and you start to buy your seeds, and you might research the different varieties of vegetables. You might look at your soil type. You might consult with a gardener, consult with a landscape architect or a landscape artist or whatever, get support basically to help you map out your garden. And then you're going to do the work. You're going to get the shovel and you're going to dig the dirt and you're going to plant the seeds and you're going to water everything and you're going to do all that stuff. This is the part of your coaching business that you need to do. And if you haven't done that very well, or you haven't done it at all, then this is again maybe the time that you need to get some support. So Wholehearted Business might be a great place for you if this is you. So you want to get that garden put in place, because that is what's going to give you the structure. And I think where a lot of people struggle is that they've got no concept of what that structure is for them. And once they have that in place, everything gets a lot easier. And again, the way that I do this work and the way that I teach this and support people with it is there's no one size fits all version of this. There are key things that you need to do, like you need a way for people to know that you exist. You need offers that you sell them. You need like the internal stuff going on so that you can actually deliver your services. Those kind of things are there, but there's so many different versions of what those could look like, just as there are so many different versions of what your garden could look like. So thinking about what that is going to be and how you're going to grow that garden is going to give you the structure that you need. And then once you've got that garden in place, you're going to know what you need to do to maintain that garden. So you're going to know that you need to water it, however often you need to water it. You're going to need to put the planned food down. You're going to need to harvest. Like, you're going to know what you need to do. And that's going to give you your annual, quarterly, mini season, weekly, monthly, daily, whatever, like work that you need to do to kind of maintain it. So the structure kind of comes out of having that initial garden in place. It gives you the tasks that you need to do on an ongoing basis, but also you know what your projecty things are. So again, to go back to this garden analogy that I am, or metaphor that I am clearly attached to now, we've gone really in on the garden thing, haven't we? Like, if like actually I really want to like plant an orchard this year, then you know that you're going to need to, right, okay, so I'm going to need to research which are the best fruit trees for this kind of soil and this kind of light conditions. I mean, I know fuck all about gardening, so I don't know why I've chosen the gardening one. But anyway, you're going to know that you're going to need to research those things. You're going to have to buy them in, you have to plant them, blah, 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 blah. Like, that is what a project would be like in your business. You're going to have to just know what it is that you need to do, take the actions to do it, all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, what you want to have in place is kind of foundation system that you have in place for your business, where you know what it needs to keep that system running, that garden growing. And then the tasks that come out of that is going to be your foundational structure for your week, for your days, for how it is that you need to show up on an ongoing basis. And then again, other things that are going to help the garden grow bigger, better, new parts of the garden, that all kind of like slots in on top. And that's what gives you that bit of structure. And again, how you apply that to your days and your week is up to you. And again, it might be that actually you're planning more monthly, and it's like, well, each month I'm going to do an email newsletter, I'm going to do this bit of content, I'm going to do this kind of launchy thing, I'm going to focus on sales in this way. But as long as it happens within that month, that's okay. But you might also be like, right, actually I need like a detailed like list for each week. This is exactly what I do each week. This is what I work with. I'm like, right, this week I'm going to do this, this and this. This week I have to do this, this and this, because again, it's what the garden needs to grow. I hope that has made sense. I know I feel like I've gone off on some tangents with a garden metaphor, but I actually really like that metaphor because I think it's very, very true to how we need to grow our coaching businesses. But I'd love your thoughts on this one. And like I say, please do go and download that checklist, the kind of like the task list for your coaching business. And it is just a suggested number of tasks that you need to do. But again, what you would really benefit from is actually having that garden actually planned out and doing the work to get that garden going. And that's what we're doing Wholehearted Business. Again, if you've already got a bit of a garden there, but it's not growing as well as you would like, my one-to-one coaching might be the better place for you there as well. If you've got any questions about working with me, just give me a shout. But I hope that has been helpful today, guys. I'd love to know, if you're watching on YouTube, leave me a comment below. What do you think about the garden metaphor? Does that work for you? If you listen on the podcast, pop me a DM on Instagram. I'm at wholeheartedly Laura. I will be back next week with another episode, and I will catch you really soon. Take care. Bye.